a little birdie listening in the White House pinged me during commercial break and said that wish to reiterate that we are not engaged in offensive operations in Iran for now, but we, the United States, not Israel, have air superiority in Iran. Implication being that we are in the skies above Iran with the Israelis, and we are engaged in defensive operations so that Israel can maintain offensive operations. That is from a little birdie at the White House listening to the program live right now. Thank you, little birdie. Now, in that regard, I want to be very clear with you that while I personally, my preference is we help the Iranian people overthrow the regime, I do not think we should be battered or scarred by Iraq and Afghanistan because Iran is not like Afghanistan or Iraq. And yes, I actually do know what I'm talking about. They're being very familiar with the region, having both lived there, know a lot of people in the region, and maintain a lot of contact with the Iranian diaspora because of a longtime friends. It's not Iraq. It's not Afghanistan. It actually is a middle class, upper middle class, highly educated, very pro-West, but they are ruthlessly repressed by the Iranian regime. You see those protests all the time, the videos of them burning American flags in the streets and chanting death to America and death to the great Satan. You get executed in Iran if you don't participate. If you're dragged into the streets and forced to participate and you don't, they're going to wrap a rope around your neck and raise a crane. You can't look at the public sentiment and think it's the private sentiment. There are certainly Islamic fundamentalists there within the regime who would cause problems. Ironically, after a No King's Day protest over the weekend, which we're going to get to, by the way, the most logical solution is to restore the Iranian monarchy, the Shah of Iran, with the Reza Pahlavi, the son of the deposed Shah of Iran. And there's a government in exile waiting to come back, and there actually is a middle class that remembers to a degree the Shah of Iran, and they remember what came after, and so it makes it possible that something like that could happen, a regime change scenario. But that's not what Donald Trump is doing. It's what I would like to do. It's not what Donald Trump wants to do. Donald Trump is making it very clear he's fine with the Ayatollah Khamenei to remain in power so long as they unconditionally surrender and get rid of their nuclear program. And it's very important for you to understand the United States has long maintained it would help Iran build nuclear capacity for civilian energy, but it absolutely has no desire to see them enrich uranium, and if they get wind of it, would wipe them out. And that's what's happening right now. The president is not misguided here. The president's not misguided. The president understands the existential threat that is Iran. And listen, this is very broken record of me. I acknowledge this is broken record of me. But I need you, particularly if you're someone who you're spiritual, you're religious, you're not like devout, you don't go to church all the time, you're not going to confession if you're Catholic. These things you take it somewhat seriously. You've got to understand that there are people in the world who take it very seriously. And the leaders of Iran are some of those people. They are very serious about bringing about the apocalypse to bring back the Mahdi. They want paradise. It is, the French would say, raison d'etre, the reason for being. It is the reason for being for the Islamic Republic of Iran is ultimately to wipe out the Jews, to bring about the Mahdi, to bring about paradise. You can think that sounds dumb. But you know what? Think of all the dumb things people have died for, all the cults. Think about the Hale-Bopp people. The comet came and they were willing to commit mass suicide. Think about those sorts of people. Think about the Scientologists out there in Hollywood who really believe Xenu flew a bunch of DC-9s or whatever and blew up volcanoes and implanted thetans. I mean, they really believe this stuff, and it's nuts. There is one regime on planet Earth, one country on planet Earth that is run like that, and that is Iran, where its leadership believes it can bring about paradise on Earth by wiping out the Jews with nuclear weapons. And by the way, they want to wipe us out too, and are explicitly tied to lots of terrorist operations around the world targeting the United States and its interests. Now, there's a side effect fallout of this. Iran is right now the number one exporter of oil to China. Well, it was until Israel blew up its oil refinery last week. Iran is also the number one supplier of weapons to Russia for Ukraine. So the United States allowing Israel to do what it's doing actually works for greater American interests than just stopping a madman from getting a nuclear weapon. It undermines the economy of China. It undermines Russia's war effort. Getting rid of Iran's capacity to make war actually undermines China and Russia to American adversaries. So there are spillover effects that work for us beyond just getting rid of the new capacity of Iran. It's not nation building. That's not nation building at all. It's really wild that the shallow thinking of people who say if it's not American territory, there's no American interest. Actually, in chess sometimes you got to sacrifice pieces, and in chess sometimes you gotta make longer term plans for your maneuvers than just the short term move that you make. That's very much, this is a chess move by the United States and Israel. This is not checkers. And a lot of these people who like to fancy themselves chess players, and by the way, I'm not a chess player. I don't like it. My son loves it. But a lot of people who fancy themselves chess players are really just playing checkers, and they're very short term in their thinking. They're not thinking about this in a more, I hate the word holistic, but a holistic way. Undermining Iran undermines China's economy by undermining their access to cheap oil. It undermines Russia's war effort in Ukraine. And that's why Tucker Carlson said the Russians would come in and defend Iran. And the Russians are like, we're not getting involved in Iran. Sorry, because why? If you know anything about Vladimir Putin and his rise to power, you know Vladimir Putin does not like radical Islamists. He really doesn't like radical Islamists. He views radical Islam, given terror attacks in Russia, as a bigger threat than the United States to Russia, and always has. Of course he wasn't going to come out and support Iran. That was just Tucker Carlson's unrealistic thinking based on his own biases. So what happens with Iran if it falls? Where does all of this wind up if Iran actually falls? If Iran falls, its people don't necessarily have access to the weaponry to be able to overthrow them, but they do have enough manpower. And I suspect what you'll start seeing is members of the secret police and military turn on the leadership, seeing what's coming, seeing the destabilizing. That tends to be what happens when things go bad. Now, we know that the entire military leadership of Iran has been killed. And we now know today that 3 of the replacements to the top leadership have been killed. And we know just before the show started that the supreme leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei's chief of staff, has been killed now, the man he relied on the most. So the supreme leader is now entirely isolated somewhere with a bunch of people he's not used to working with. At the end of the day, a lot of these people are going to want to live. We know that Iran not only does it have a well-educated middle class and upper middle class that's pretty pro-American, pro-West, we know that Iran has one of the largest diasporas around the country, with massive amounts of Iranian immigrants in the United States, in parts of the Middle East, in Europe, in Canada. Many of them would love to go back to an Iran that is free. Right now, in Israel, there's a massive wave of people trying to get back to Israel to help fight. Massive wave. It's kind of extraordinary. For all the missiles and rockets being launched by Iran at Israel, there's a massive wave of people trying to get into Israel to help Israel fight. If the supreme leader falls and the government is destabilized, I suspect you're going to see a massive wave of people wanting to get into Iran to help restore the country. And those are people who have lived in Western countries under democratic administrations who want to bring that to Iran. I don't think you'll see, if the Shah of Iran, for example, were restored, I don't think you'd see an absolute monarch. I think you would see a figurehead leader who is resolved to bring about a united Iran through a democratically elected parliament of non-radicals and non-fundamentalists who would actually have really good relationships with Israel, because as I mentioned to you the other day, a lot of Iranians are family members of a lot of Jews in Iran and in Israel because of historic reasons from when Nebuchadnezzar brought the Jewish people to Babylon and then spread them throughout the Persian Empire before Cyrus let them go home. There are 4,000, 3,000-year-old historic ties between Israel and Iran you can't underestimate. The Ayatollah and the Islamic Republic are the interlopers. It's actually kind of interesting. The other day, the Iranian foreign minister on social media was tweeting before he got killed just how many times the Iranian people have protected Jews in history. What he didn't want to note is that every single one of those examples was before the Islamic Republic. Wanted to take credit for all the things that happened before the Islamic Republic overthrew all those people. Iran is actually has great capability of being a stable country. But what's happening right now is not regime change. Israel says it wants regime change. Israel says it would love to replace the Iranian regime with something new. But they're not getting that right now. Donald Trump is not involved in nation building. He's just involved in ending their nuclear capacity. This is the president from yesterday.
Are you open to negotiating with the Iranians right now, or do you want to wait?
I don't know. I've been negotiating. I told them to do the deal. They should have done the deal. Their cities have been blown to pieces. They've lost a lot of people. They should have done the deal. I told them do the deal. So I don't know. I'm not too much in the mood to negotiate now.
Now, one more from the president. Very simple one.
Remember, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. We don't have to go too deep into it. They just can't have a nuclear weapon.
They can't have a nuclear weapon. That's his entire policy. If you hear people on television, radio, or the internet talking about we can't be engaged in regime change, we can't be engaged in nation building, you need to understand they are knowingly or not peddling the lies of a bunch of anti-Semites, because we're not engaged in nation building and we're not engaged in regime change. As the president says, they can't have a nuclear weapon. It is in America's interest. It is America first. He said it. No one else gets to define what America first is. He does. And it is in our national interest for Iran to not get a nuclear weapon. The president is not engaged in regime change. The president is not engaged in nation building. He's engaged in destroying their nuclear capacity. And if a B-2 needs to drop a couple bunker buster bombs to completely wipe out their underground nuclear capability, so be it, to preserve America's national interest. It is very much against our national interest for the one country on earth that has pledged to destroy us to get nuclear weapons. I can't make it more simple than that. And if you're setting your hair on fire over nation building and regime change, you're not a serious person, because the president of the United States, who you all love, is the guy saying this isn't nation building or regime change. They can't get a nuclear weapon. That's what this is about. They can't get a nuclear weapon. Do you suddenly, after pouring all of your hopes and dreams into Donald Trump, now not believe him? Do you now think the man is lying after all of these years of having his back? He says it's not nation building. It's not regime change. They can't get a nuclear weapon. You suddenly no longer believe him? Why is it that when he sides with Israel against a regime that wants to wipe us both out, you suddenly don't believe the president of the United States? Why exactly is that?